We're live
We're back.
on a Monday,
Yeah. Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. And
Thank you.
thank you to all the people that have served.
Yeah, the veterans.
Today we're going to talk about rule number 4 of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life.
Yes.
And rule number 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Yes.
What do you think of that?
It's beautiful because, with the onset of the internet, everybody's posting a beautiful life and this and that. And um, many of us have beautiful lives, but life is not without challenges. And
Yeah.
so it's not exactly what you post. In fact, there's all kinds of fake posts out there.
You're
Um,
talking about social media and people portraying a certain image and we compare to that image.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, you can make your life miserable by trying to reach something else that you are not. And how do you get there that quickly? Usually there's a pattern for growth and development, and you take steps, to get to a position, whatever that may be. Whether it's, I'm not talking economically, just I'm talking about if you want to learn the piano, you can't learn the piano overnight, although there's a ton of videos out there that say that you can. You can't become a good soccer player overnight. You can't, you have to put work and energy into everything that you do.
Yeah.
So he's saying concentrate on getting a little bit better than you were the day before, yesterday. And if you do that a little at a time, by the end of the year, 365 days ahead, you will be a totally different human being,
A better version.
a better version than you are.
Now, have you always practiced that? Have you always lived by that?
No, I'm guilty of the prior. I'm guilty of looking at the final output and trying to get there as fast as I can. And, it's too big of a battle to take. And sometimes you get, unmotivated and you drop off. And I think human nature is a lot of that.
Yeah, we compare.
Yeah. So, no, I'm guilty of the prior many times,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
today, even now, you know?
Well, I think you seem to care less for that comparison. It seems like you're confident now more in yourself that you seem to compare less. At least that's the image what I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm older.
Yeah.
And I'm 65 years old, and you come to the realization, he says it here, life is a zero-sum game.
Yeah, I didn't really know what the definition of that was. Can you explain that?
I think that it means nobody's getting out of life. You lose.
Yeah, one person wins, one person loses. They were, when I looked it up, it was using chess as an example.
Yeah.
There's a winner, there's a loser.
Okay, well, in this zero-sum game is we're all sooner or later are gonna depart.
Right.
So why not make it the best that we possibly can?
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about, when you want to improve your life, you get to a point where you say, I want to improve my life, and not necessarily at the stake of somebody else. I want to improve my life and at the same time improve the life of those around me
Yeah.
and my family and my friends and even those that I don't know. And then he says, and even potentially your enemy. And then he says, and you're definitely not equipped for that kind of a thinking because that creates a whole new shift. But he's got a good point, man. I mean, if we improve our lives a little bit at a time,
We improve those around us. That's just a given.
yeah, and that energy is just as contagious as if it was, I would think, bad energy, although
Mm-hmm.
some people would argue that, you know?
In going over this rule, I think it's a solid point to not compare with other people on social media and all that. I think of as I was coming up in my career in business, which was sales, all I did was compare. Maybe compare is the wrong word. I looked at what the other people were doing. They were doing better than me.
Yes.
I studied them, copied a lot of what they did, and to be able to reach those higher levels. I never looked at it as I was like, I never looked at how well they were doing in business. I'm going to talk specifically in business, and felt bad for myself, or um, I actually was inspired. So I brought this up because it's just another angle, because I think it is good to compare. Maybe that's not the word. It is good to have examples that are doing better than us and strive to do better, but use it as inspiration. I think the problem with social media and other forms of comparison, maybe it should just be on the playground. It could be you're comparing with the shoes the other kid has, right? Or you're comparing with that kid can do 100 push-ups and I can only do 20 or whatever, right? Maybe that kind of comparison. But I also think it is good to a certain, and I know this is a little different than what Jordan Peterson's talking about, but if he can do 100, how did he get to 100? We can study him. Oh, he's actually doing push-ups every single day, twice a day, and work towards that, because that's what I personally did, and I thought it was a very good, it helped me a lot to look at the top performers and strive to get inspired by them, not take it and be like, "Oh man, look how well they're doing. I'm miserable here."
Well, that's a very noble thought. And when you look at it from the perspective that you are trying to improve yourself,
Correct.
yeah, that can be motivational, like you said. And it was motivational to you and it worked well for you. You kind of reversed engineered, let's say, their success in that particular arena. You're
Right.
talking about business. Why are they selling so many policies? And how did they get to do that?
Yeah.
Well, what did they do to get there? Well, they probably knew their product very well, and they probably put a lot of time and effort into their presentation, and they probably did this and
Yeah.
that.
We
And
can
so
learn from them.
that's right. And I think that's very admirable. Okay. What I think happens in the, because he's talking a little bit about envy. And when envy comes into the play, then that is a destructive force, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so, you, because he says, oh, you know what? I want my boss's position.
Right.
Okay. But why do you want it? Is it because you want the success and the attributes and the money that comes with the position? What about all the drawbacks that come with the position? Like maybe he's the first one there and the last one to go. Maybe he's got a ton of responsibility that's affecting his health or a little bit or whatever. So, what about all the other stuff? You won the position, but are you aware of what all of it entails?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
see
I
what I
thought that
mean?
was interesting that he used the boss's position as he's
An example, yeah.
yeah, and also it's a he's making us go back and like assess our life, and like, what do we actually want? Do you actually want that boss's position? Is that something that are, you want to grow in that way, or why? What do you like? What do you want to improve on? Do you just aim to be better than you were yesterday?
Hmm.
I think it's a good
I
message.
really love it.
Yeah, I think it's a good message as well. Especially if you're down in a pit and you're not feeling good, and you're comparing yourself to the people that are, whether it's, friends or coworkers or whatever, and that comparison in that way doesn't lead usually to anything good. The material things they have, or they're traveling the world and I'm here stuck here working or whatever. Those comparisons come, and I think that but they've always been around. I just think what happened that Jordan Peterson says is, before, you would be in a small town and there was one guy that was really good. He was the best dentist in that town.
Yeah.
Or you had another guy who was the best mechanic, or there was
Right.
two. And now when you're in bigger cities, you're just one it you're just one of another million people that are excellent at that too. You don't really stand out. You don't get that serotonin hit,
Yeah.
dopamine hit that these people in small towns get because you're the best at it. Everyone's coming to you. I thought that was an interesting
Oh, for
point.
sure. It's, you know what that reminds me of? When you guys were playing soccer
Mm-hmm.
and then you were playing AYSO, which is fine. Okay, it's wonderful. But then we try to put some of you in club, and the difference between AYSO and club was
Big difference.
big difference. So you were really, really good at in AYSO, and then we take you to a club, and all of a sudden
Not that good.
you're not that good. You're actually sitting on the bench because there were a lot of kids that were just as good as you, but better, maybe.
Yeah.
And so it reminds me of that. And that's a shock to the system of anybody. Okay. I use soccer, but let's talk about a mechanic. Let's talk about a dentist. Let's talk about a doctor. Let's talk about a pianist. Whatever you are doing, okay? He's saying there's always someone that's much, much better than you. He's talking about guitar players too. Um,
Right.
and so I think that what one of the messages, I mean, this rule is fantastic. I really like it. I can apply it to myself because, like I'm telling you, I make these mistakes often. So, but I think that, you know, when you look at it that way, if you take resentment into your heart, as opposed to trying to say, look, I'm going to try the best that I possibly can to improve the best I can or die trying,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And then that may give you an opportunity to become as good as the next one. Because there is something about being touched by the hand of God. You know, I hear Patrick and David say a lot, hey, not everybody can jump as high as Michael Jordan. He's got springs for legs,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So there's some of us that no matter how hard we try, we're not going to be able to to jump that high. That's one opinion, but you can try and you can die trying. I mean, you can try and try and try until there are some physical attributes that other people have over others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
Um, yeah, I like this is a quote from the book. Failure is the price we pay for standards, and standards are necessary. The reason he's bringing this up is because,
And on that, he says poorly designed buildings fall in earthquakes.
mhm.
And what do you think is the reason he brings this up?
Well, yeah, you need standards. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but here's again where it gets a little controversial what he says. And, maybe it's not controversial, but this is a quote from the book. We are not equal in ability or outcome and never will be. That's nowadays a controversial thing,
It is.
you know, to say that. But Jordan Peterson saying, look, we're not equal in ability. Some of us are better at certain things. And the reason he's saying that is because, well, just strive to just be better than who you were yesterday. We're not equal. And the reality is that the minority of people will have the majority of the success. He uses different words, but that's essentially what he's saying.
Hmm.
And he's saying it'll always be that way. That the minority will have the majority of the success, let's say. What do you think of that?
I think it's true.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. You know, he's comparing, he says, here's an alternative to uh, feeling down or beaten by whatever it is you're comparing yourself to. And then again, you know, this is my opinion. This is your opinion. We do our research independent of each other, and then we sit down and we give our opinion. You may read this book, um, and come up with something that deviates from what we say, because you know it depends where you are in your life when you read any book, actually.
Of
um
course.
the but he's talking about, um he says, the winner doesn't always take it all, but usually takes a lot of it. Okay? Because you remember that song, The Winner Takes It All?
Mm,
Well, he's saying, the winner doesn't always take it all, but takes most of it.
yeah,
And then he says, well, you compare success to failure, and they're both needed as we're getting to the top of the mountain. So it's very interesting. He says there's many degrees of each, and you can play the game in many areas or create your own game, you know? So, um it he I agree with it so wholeheartedly, especially now that I'm older. Improve yourself a little bit at a time,
hmm,
but be consistent. Rely on the fact that you're going to do something to improve yourself on a daily basis. And
yeah,
again, he says at the end of the year, you got 365 days. You are a completely different human being from when you started.
correct. And then the way that he breaks down, like, how do you actually become a better person? Uh, it starts with coming through on promises you make to yourself. How do you treat yourself? Are you a tyrant to yourself? Those are interesting things because I've never really thought about, like, how do I talk to myself?
Well,
Oh, if I say I'm gonna do something, let's say that's difficult to do, and he even breaks it down to, like, if you're gonna wash the dishes, dry them, put them back in the cover kind of situation. Like, finish the task. And by doing so, I think that was in actually a podcast that he said, but by doing so, you have completed that circle. And then if you're going to do a difficult task, you will give yourself some sort of reward. Do you like coffee? Well, then go get your coffee because you did something that was challenging for you to do and you don't always do it. And you better give yourself that coffee, because if you don't, then now I guess the voice inside, or the person inside, is going to say, hey, I did this difficult task, but I didn't get the reward that I was promised, which was a coffee. So now I'm being lied to. And so the next time that you want to do something difficult and you say, it's okay, we're going to go for whatever, uh, afterwards, we're going to do something that you enjoy, the voice, I guess, the person within doesn't believe it anymore. And
right.
that's very dangerous, he says. That's an interesting way to.
Well, it contradicts a lot of the stuff that I've grown up with. For
Like what?
example, look, let me give you an example, and let me put you on the spot. I love doing that. That's the beauty of this. So you can give us what's on your mind. Your perspective is 30 years different than mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
33 years. No, 32 years different than mine. So he says, look, especially when I'm talking about business, I always thought aim for the highest. Shoot for the stars, and if you don't get the stars, you might get the clouds, but aim for the highest. He says here, aim small. He says it in the rule. Aim small. That's not so bad. Aim small. By the end of the day, you got a tiny bit better, and then you know that portrays itself at the end of the day. So if you aim small and you change a tiny bit of yourself every day,
Yeah, it adds up.
it adds up. I was never ever told aim small.
Yeah.
I was always told, aim for the swing for the fences. And so he says this, and he says little by little, it's kind of like the compound interest effect,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And he's right
It's
on
just
the
that it doesn't feel like you're making that much progress when you're doing small little incremental things. I think that's why we try to aim for a big, let's say in sales, a big goal and that to increase because it feels like we're doing a lot. Um, so I think that's why, yeah, it's opposite of, let's say, what most of us do.
And then he says that we're blind, that we don't see the entire picture. He says, look, listen to this. I had to read this literally 3 or 4 times. What you aim at determines what you see. What you aim at determines what you see. And he says, our vision at best is peripheral and has low resolution. You ignore the complexity of the world, you're actually blind. And then they do that. He talks about that experiment about the people passing the basketball and
Right.
the
It's a
gorilla.
yeah, a psychologist I think did an experiment. I think was it Simmons
Right.
that there was a I actually in psychology class saw that.
Actually, the first time I saw that, I never saw the gorilla.
Me neither. I didn't see the gorilla. He says half the people, I think half the people don't see the gorilla.
So he's telling you that you are blind,
Yeah.
that you,
It's right
so
in front of you.
what you aim at determines what you see. You're oblivious to the rest of the stuff.
Because you're so focused on how many passes are going to be made that you don't see what's in front of you.
And he says vision is very expensive. And when you look at things that way,
Expensive?
yeah, that's what he says. Your vision is very expensive because you're blind. You don't see nothing. And it's expensive because you're missing the beauty of everything else that you are missing around you.
Hmm.
Be a little bit more perspective. I mean,
Yeah.
it let me tell you, it messes with your stuff. On a couple of these, I had to, put the book down and go over a little bit in my mind. And this is from a different perspective. I'm an older person today. I don't know what exactly your thoughts on it, but to me, it was wow.
Yeah.
It was like a eureka moment. 'Cause-
Yeah. For me, I it makes me kind of retract from going on social media, to be honest. That's what it does for me because social media is people that I know or somewhat or maybe some of them I don't even know and I'm looking at their life. And so when I hear something like this, which I think is as it is, I struggle with social media. Do I want to be on it all the time? This and that. We use social media to market and promote business and things.
Mhm.
But in terms of like consuming, is it good for me? Is it good for my mind? And for me, if I just focus on improving who I was yesterday, not comparing to who someone is today, then I'm gonna be off of those applications.
Okay.
That's the way that I look at it. Because and in life as I see people, because we're in business and we see people maybe who drive a fancy car or, you know, wear these suits or whatever the case or a fancy watch, realizing that, you know, they are where they are in their life and good for them, but
Yeah.
not put myself down.
Right. So to that, he says, look, there's always going to be the obsessive CEO who has a better watch than you, okay? And a much better self-winding,
Yeah. The
um,
box.
yeah, box made out of gold and steel and wood that shades in comparison to what you've got,
Yeah.
right? So he's saying there's always going to be that obsessive CEO that has something better than you. So
Yeah, it's not healthy. It's not
it's
good.
not healthy.
It's not if you're trying to improve yourself.
Right. Now, unfortunately, I like social media a lot.
Well, that's not necessarily
Well,
unfortunately.
okay, so a difference of opinion. You want to get out of social media. I'm not gonna because I'm using social media to learn all kinds of things and get aspects on all kinds of different things.
Yeah, I
But
think that,
you have to be very careful. You get drawn, and I'm probably not aware of my own sickness.
well, I think that, um, I think it's a little different again where you are in your life. Maybe you're comparing
I
less.
I don't
Like,
care about the watches and the cars and the
yeah.
fancy
So
clothing.
it's different.
I don't give a darn about that.
I'm not saying that the recipe for you is to get off social media or for other people necessarily, but I know for myself, I feel better when I'm off of it.
Okay, well then there's your answer.
And I think that this reflection, is it's just a reminder. Um,
Right.
Jordan Peterson says, "What is it you genuinely love? Are you a tyrant with yourself being the slave? Um, when you have something to say, silence is a lie." What do you think about that quote?
When you have something to say,
Silence is a lie.
I think you have to speak your truth.
Yeah.
Stand up for what you believe, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Um, because I've always thought, I don't I can kind of keep certain things to myself. I don't have to say them just because I have something to say or
Maybe
whatever.
you're fearful of a battle.
It could be fearful of a battle, or
You're fearful of a conflict.
it could be that. It could be
You don't
that
think it's worth it.
it's not worth it.
Okay.
Where do you want to spend your energy? But I think you have to that in the specific context. This chapter is quite lengthy, and he brings up there's a lot of context to that quote, but I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, a lot of it, take stock of who you are. You need to know because you can't fix something you don't know is broken. When you buy a house, you hire a home inspector. That home inspector goes and checks the plumbing, the electrical, the roof, everything, as we know. And then they give you a report. This is what's wrong with the house. If you don't do that to yourself, if you don't have either someone inspect you or you yourself do, like, who am I? What are my maybe concerns, my issues, and write them down, and then try and address each issue. You can't fix something you don't know is broken. I thought that was very powerful.
It is, man.
Very powerful. Um
Yeah, it's deep.
yeah. Yeah, and he's coming from he's a clinical psychologist, Jordan Peterson. And so he's had his practice and he's coming from that angle. So he goes deep into, like, how you treat yourself, what you actually want in life, and how to get out of maybe a hole if you're in one. Cuz I think about it, cuz his practice as a clinical psychologist probably is addressing a lot of people that have a lot of maybe traumas or issues. So he's coming from that angle. How do I make their lives better? How do they make their lives better? And it's by small little things that
Small
improve their
increments.
day. Yeah.
He gives the example of that pile of paper in your room. And he says, there's that pile of paper in the room. Okay. So don't you want to improve yourself? Well, let's start with that pile of paper. Take 10 minutes, 15 minutes and go through it. And let's find out if we can resolve some of the issues in that pile of paper, put it in its proper place or perspective. You're going to find what? Bills from the IRS,
Yeah.
bills from the gas company, bills from the water company. And he says there may be a hydra there. You cut one head off and 10 others,
Snakes.
seven others. And so he says, you have to be careful. And he compares it to improving your life because he says, look, there's one part where he says, you want to live a better life, okay? Well, hold on a minute. Be careful because there's a lot of responsibility that comes with trying to live a better life. You're going to need to have discipline. You're going to have
It's going to be
hours,
hard.
huh?
It's going to be hard.
Yeah, yeah. But then he says, look, it's going to be difficult, but have you ever considered that the journey up may not be that, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
There's there's something to be gained by that hard journey up. I mean, he threw a lot of stuff at me that I had to sit down. Maybe that shows how much I need to improve on myself. Really honestly. I mean, honestly, it
Yeah.
was a humbling
Yeah.
chapter.
Yeah.
Uh
I've taken away from each chapter something really positive.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's he says, be careful what you want because that when you aim for something, you take the risk of becoming blinded to other things
Yeah.
because you're aiming so hard for it.
Yeah.
Like what is, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah, and that Daniel Simon was the psychologist, I guess, that came up with those tests. Super interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you take? What's the final take for you
Yeah.
on
I
this?
well, I think in just in a practical sense, um for me it's trying to reduce that idea of comparing to who where other people are today. Um
Stop
because
comparing yourself to other people.
yeah, yeah. As- Social media is not the only thing that does that, but it is a huge, huge factor.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's being less on it. Um,
Okay.
Aim for a better life. Better for you leads to better for you and your family, your friends, and people around you. I do believe that. Um, I think that just the message overall on this one is, and in a practical sense, like in business, the way that I've always done it when I have been, since I was 23, I was off of a salary. So
Okay.
I've been self-employed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And independent, running my own business, and it's very challenging. And so the way I always measured it is, year over year, am I growing in my skill set, which translates to making more money. So have I made in my business year over year? That's how I have always compared. Am I better than the year before? Am I better than the year before? And there was one year that I think I was maybe 26 or 20, 25, 26. I don't remember exactly. 26, 27, and I made the same amount of income both years. And
So that year you didn't improve yourself.
that's the way that I took it. And I was beating myself up a lot because I said, I didn't move up that year. I wasn't comparing to what other people were making. I wasn't comparing. And so for me, in a practical sense, I've lived by this rule.
Okay.
In business, in a personal setting, it's different. But in business, I've always compared to my prior best. And that's worked for me. And I think it's a really good. So that year that I made the same income both years was very hard for me because I thought, I'm taking classes and I'm working and I'm doing this and that, and I still didn't make more. And so one could say, yeah, but you learned and you have experience. No, but it didn't translate. And in business, the way we measure our success is through the income that we earn. It's like, how do you measure? Uh, Part of how we measure health is weight and labs, right? So it's the result is the income. The result are the labs. How did your labs come out? And my labs that year were the same, and so I didn't improve.
What do you say to someone that, for example, is learning the piano? Is there like a learning curve and then it plateaus? What do you say to someone that it's trying to learn the piano or something else,
Yeah.
another a career, okay? And
So,
and they don't see the results immediately, but they're struggling like weightlifting,
well, weightlifting, you're doing more reps, you're carrying more
but you
weight.
don't see results right away.
The result is in you carrying more weight. If you can do a more one more rep than you did yesterday, that's a result. So you're getting
Okay,
stronger.
okay.
Piano's a little different, but I'm talking business. In business, did you generate another dollar?
Yeah, did you
Then
make more money?
did you make more money? So that's kind of an easier way to measure. Instead of comparing to other people, did you improve? In piano, um,
You play the piano.
piano's a little tougher, but I guess there are plateaus that we all hit. In I think in everything you hit some sort of
That's
a
why I'm
plateau.
asking, because do you get discouraged?
Oh,
What do
it
you do?
yeah, yeah.
So what do you do when you hit that plateau?
Well, on the business side, when I hit that plateau, I used that as a motivation. And I said, "Man, how did I make the same 2 years? I
You
wasted
said
my
you were
time."
very discouraged.
Very discouraged. I used that energy of discouragement to work harder.
Okay.
In piano, I would say that's a good question. Like, how
To
do you
work
know?
hard, or to retrospect and figure out if you're doing the same thing wrong, or you
Well,
need to do something different, or because it's different from working
I
hard.
created more.
Introspect. Did you study
You,
yourself? Did you
yeah,
study your business?
yes. What? So when I say I work harder, that translated to it wasn't just working harder. You're right. It meant more structure because I would have a decent month and then I'd coast.
Oh,
And so when I created more structure and I separated myself a little bit and delegated some things, that was helpful for me. I'm trying to think for in piano, like how would you know that you're improving? Um, it's a good question, but and I'm kind of stuck on it. Yeah, I don't know.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the beauty of this, because we ask ourselves questions and
I would
we
say,
show.
are you able to play better? Like, are you able to play more pieces than you could yesterday? Are you able to play that piece that you struggled with a lot in better than you did yesterday?
I would love to hear your comments. I
Yeah,
would love to hear if there's a piano player out there, or, and it's
there's
not just that, because you reach plateaus in everything.
yeah,
And we would love to hear your comments. How do you deal with something like that?
yeah,
And share it.
yeah. No, that's tough, but I think that when you hit that plateau, you still gotta keep pushing forward, keep learning, try to get better. Yeah,
I guess maybe think, okay, I need to get better a little bit at a time,
yeah, yeah.
and continue to move forward. What did they say? There's a saying out there, that the only animal in the world, and I hope I'm not messing this up, that um, walks through the storm is the bison, because he
Oh,
knows, he says every other animal tries to avoid the storm, or if they're in the storm, they buckle down and they're trying to wait for the storm to pass. But the only animal in the world is the bison. He walks into the storm and continues to walk through it. And the question is, does he know that at one point the storm is going to end? Because he's going to walk right through the storm. He just continues. He's a big, strong animal, continues to walk through it. And so
that's
maybe when you
interesting.
get to one of those plateaus, you just have to
Keep going.
become a bison and continue to walk through it until you get beyond that in any point in life,
I
I
like
would
that.
say.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm telling you, I have to read this again
Yeah,
before the next one, because it was brutal. I literally had to put things down couple few times, because it's telling me to do something that I had never been told before.
yeah.
And it's a wonderful book.
It's making you dig deep.
Oh my goodness.
All right, we'll wrap it up.
How how much I need to learn, so much more. All right.
Both of us. Thank
Hmm.
you.